So the changing face of broadcast network TV came into stark relief this week as NBC Universal held an elaborate and lengthy investment conference to talk about some of the trends in that business. There's a lot to talk about. What's a top line takeaway from you?
You know, they don't do this too often. It's been 2 years since they talked to the analyst. You know, a couple of interesting things that just jump out at you. The NBC network has gone from first to fourth place, so the profits have gone from 90 million or 900 million to 100 million. They've got 15 cable networks, and last year the cable networks made $1.2 billion. So the cable networks combined make 12 times as much money as the NBC television network. Big, stark number that is surprising. The other one that was interesting at a big level was the digital number. They're going to make about $700 million in revenue in digital this year. That's online, broadband, mobile, wireless. 500 million of that 700 million is advertising. Next year, the respective numbers are like 700 million in advertising and 1 billion in digital revenue in 2008.
It's a lot of zeros.
It's it's interesting when you break this business down into its sort of granular entity, which is a television show, to talk about some of the old versus new possibilities and models in an episodic TV program.
You know, NBC threw up a slide about Heroes, arguably one of their better new shows that are out there, or at least the more popular shows. And you know, a show like that years ago might have brought in, they said 500 million in first run revenue, network revenue. Now it's like 375 million, but that's being replaced by, cable revenue, pre-premiere revenue, electronic DVD revenue, video streaming revenue across the internet. So you can see it's an interesting thing that's happening within these major companies because, NBC and the broadcast network, like we said, aren't as profitable as before, yet it's still sort of the origination engine for shows. That's where you got to put the show, and then you can run it over. There's some premieres of shows on USA even before it hits NBC. I mean, Zucker was talking about the USA network as the fifth network, as opposed to not being a cable network, but we view it now as sort of the fifth, broadcast network. And USA probably made more profits just alone out of that 15 than NBC did last year. So, interesting spin on things.
From a competitive standpoint, if you put on your cable industry hat, are there trend lines here that ought to concern a cable distributor? Big play in online and digital distribution of content, and there's a lot of enthusiasm about the advertising revenue that's there to support that.
Yeah, and I think the cable industry continues to have to move as quickly as possible on dynamic ad insertion with VOD. I mean, I think that's the cable's answer to everybody watching shows online, and that advertising revenue going direct to NBC or ABC or CBS. And we're seeing more of that. Zucker kind of played nice in a question about that, saying that we still support the ad-supported model. But I think the industry has to move quickly on that because it's just one of like 12 revenue streams. I mean, when they were rattling off what they were going to do with the Olympics, 1,400 hours of live streaming online, lots of both VOD packages and streaming packages on mobile and wireless carriers. They are going to do a daily wrap-up show that's going to be on VOD with the highlights, but between all the live stuff on television, everything that you can get on broadband, everything you get in mobile, VOD, which is kind of arguably one of cable's kind of lead horses in this widening scope of digital, is kind of, bifurcated over here on the fringes of the revenue that these guys are looking at.
Well, and think about also Comcast is really making a lot of stakes right now in their online aggregation through their portals and things like that. So that's another way that they can get in on this as well to claim some of that internet revenue and some of that action that's coming in.
A category we've talked about, and Karen, you follow, is wireless and the sort of media transformation of wireless. Is from what NBC's posture looks like, Matt, there's a lot of activity there. Is there revenue and economic vitality against that category?
You roll the dice and the numbers are small now and they expect it to grow. They threw out a figure of 150 million in revenue in 3 years from the combination of mobile revenue and paid downloads such as iTunes. Now, 150 million is a sizable number. That number this year may be 20 million, something like that. But you got to start somewhere. And I think these guys feel like they have to start somewhere. The upfront is going to be flat compared to last year. We know what the profit picture looks like at NBC TV. I mean, they're not quite desperate, but they are moving as fast as they can on all these new platforms to drive revenue because they're not driving revenue from the old traditional platforms. So they got to do this with broadband. They got to do it with mobile, figure out whatever they can. And it's a lot of mixing and matching. It's lots of singles and doubles in this new world.
Yeah, instead of one bullet, you're going from the buckshot approach, essentially. Just firing a lot of stuff up there to see what brings you back some revenue.
They've got the big NBC News Corp news site, kind of YouTube plus full episode site that's going to be up and running in September. It's going to be distributed across all the major internet portals. That's going to be a big deal. They're kind of focused to monetize ad-supported revenue from an online model. I mean, Heroes, The Office, all those shows are going to be up there. There's going to be ads to go with them. You can watch them. Probably can't, won't be able to fast forward through them. And but that's going to be a big chunk and core of NBC's view going forward.
Well, we've been at this for a while, and to watch that progression of cable over the past 20 years from being a real stepchild and also ran of the television business to a 12-to-1 operating profit producer for one of the large network broadcast companies is really quite an interesting journey. Thank you.